told me there was a lot of sinkholes around there that back years ago that people would go up there to investigate the area and then fall into a sinkhole because they didn't even know where these mine shaft, for air inlets were.
Oh yeah. It's best to stay on the road and don't go off into the woods there or something. So there you go. You're using another example of knowing your environment, knowing what's there. And I'm going to pull us back to one thought and then back to my original thought about the going up this trail on this next day. But the one thing I wanted to say was, you made a comment about how people. First tendency is when they hear about Bigfoot, the first thing they do is want to pack up the car. They can go in the deepest. They think they have to go to the deepest part of the forest, and go to areas where you're going to invite danger for yourself if you're not really knowing what you're dealing with that way out there. And I'm going to try to tell people, or hopefully in this particular broadcast or this interview, that that's not necessary. Because most of the stuff the internet actions I have, that I've learned the protocol, or I've learned what it takes to be able to engage their interaction with me. And believe me, it doesn't take you going clear out into a remote area. I am, of course, in the mountains, which puts me in the best proximity to the woods where I can walk out to it. But I am generally not going any further than a quarter mile into the forest from any main road, and I have plenty of interaction because they're that close. But it's more of a matter of how do you attract them to you, because you'll never be able to chase them. Okay, once you start understanding the nature of why they're able to hide so well, it's because they know you're coming a mile away before you even realize that you're coming close to them.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, of course, if you get into a situation where they're not going to move, like what you're talking about, I think in your particular case, it was more of a case of there was something going on, that there could have been some young ones nearby, or they could have been some kind of feeding thing, or they were doing something that was important there, and they had to run you off.
No, they did a good job of that, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and generally they're not trying to hurt you. They're just going to scare you to leave. And they have their different ways of doing it. Just the flat-out brute force approach of just chasing you is one thing, kind of like a menacing force. There are other ways that people experience the more paranormal things, such as infrasound, which is using sound waves to kind of induce a state of anxiety to cause you to say, something's not right here, I got to get out of here. It's that weird feeling you get, it's this a sick pit in your stomach feeling that you shouldn't be there. Or just like, emitting an odor, was just very similar to garbage, or like a skunky garbage smell. And I've only encountered that once, but I think it was a young one that was scared. They'll induce that. And even then, sometimes I wonder if it's really a smell coming through your nose, or it's something they're inducing through some kind of thing they're putting in your head, making you think you smell something bad, just to get you to leave. So that's an interesting thing too.
Well,
but anyway,
I remember the smell when we were getting in the car when it was about 25 feet from us. I'd tell you, It was so pungent, it made me want to almost throw up, but it burned my throat. That's how strong it was. It literally burned.
Worse than a skunk, probably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd rather got sprayed by a skunk.
Yeah, I've only had that encounter once with a young one. My tent was set up, of course, in the remote perimeter of the camp. And, I had one of those walk-in tents where you have the guidelines that are tied off tightly around the tent, but they stick out from the tent a little bit, with the pegs. So if someone was walking around at night, if they weren't careful and got too close to the tent, they'd actually trip on a guideline and pull the pin out. Okay. Well, I knew nobody was down there, and I had been down there. Everything was fine. The pins were in there. It was just getting dark. And we went up there for a little bit, and as I was coming back, I had my flashlight, and I got close to the tent. I was smelling a little bit of what you were talking about. And I took my flashlight, And I'm looking at one of the guidelines of the tent, and it's like really loose. The peg's in the ground, it's connected to the guy line, but there's all sorts of slack on the sky line. Well, and I pulled out the peg and retightened it. Says, whatever was down there must have tripped on the guy line to cause the peg to come out, the little metal spike peg to come out. And in a panic, pushed it back in the ground and took off. Nobody else was down there. Well, animals don't do that.
No, they wouldn't put it back.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, in the mere fact that I associated so it was not a smell that they put out, like, I think it was a young one, but they didn't put that smell out to scare me. I think they were scared, and they caused that, out of a panic, they emitted that odor. You see what I'm saying? So, but getting back to what happened the day after we saw that cloaking Bigfoot, I had decided to go back up the trail to that same area by myself. But like I said, it was safe because it was daylight. I think it was midday, and so I didn't bring any recording equipment because I was more interested in an experience, and I didn't want to basically mess that up. Now I'm going to say that at the time, that's what I heard. I mean, since then, of course, I bring equipment. I bring my camera. Sometimes I have a recorder. The big difference is I don't hide it from them. I'm not trying to be sneaky about it. I take pictures of the background, or I bring the recorder, say, hey, I got it. I'm just, Matter of fact, my latest video that I think you picked up on today was an audio from the summer where I talked about a whole lot of stuff, went up the trail, talked a bit, and talked out loud, said, I had this recorder here. See, I'm just talking about these experiences stuff, set it down, listened for a short while, and all of a sudden the biggest knock slam you've ever heard on the ridge, it just really spoofed me, So I got that recorded on my YouTube channel, which is Planet Sasquatch for reference, if you ever go there. But I went up that trail that day. So that would be September 12th of 2014. And so I'm getting up I went past the area where the cloaking, there was a side trail you would have taken to see where that was at. But I decided to go into the main field area I was describing earlier. Excuse me. And so I'm getting in there, and before I went up there, it was a calm day. I think the sun was out. There was no wind blowing anywhere or anything like that. So I started walking in this area, and then the wind picks up out of the blue. So where is this wind coming from? You hear the trees above you, the leaves are starting to go back and forth. The trees are bending a little bit. But while this is happening, the effect on me was not only hearing and feeling this, I was starting to have an emotional response to whatever was going on. I felt staticky, like electrical staticky feeling all around me.
Uh-huh.
I felt this sense of euphoria, like I didn't have a care in the world. And it was just so hard to describe. It's just like pure joy. So I walk through here, and I walk through the other end of this field area, and then I turn around and it says, oh, and I'm going like, I'm acting nuts at this point. I'm going and I'm throwing my arms back and forth and going, hello, forest. And I throw the other arm the other direction. And I say, hello, Bigfoot, to Sasquatch, forest people. Hello, little people. I'm just going like, I don't even think I said little people. No, I didn't say little people at the time because I didn't have that experience yet. But I was talking about the forest people. It says, and all the wonderful mythical things that are out here. I was just going on. I was just going on and on and on, like I had a wand and I was some kind of wizard. Or I don't even know why I was doing it. Okay, so I have this. So I'm setting the stage for how I'm feeling. As I'm walking back, I know the sun is shining through the trees, and it's coming down, and there's a creek area, and I'm looking off to the side of the trail to the right, and I see this shiny reflective orange that's at first thought was more of a metallic reflection of something. In other words, the brilliant sunlight, when it's reflecting through a mirror or through something like chrome, it would show an orangey or yellow, very, very, very bright color. I got closer to it. The reflection was coming. It was like light was coming from above the trail. In other words, off to the side of the trail, there was these beams of light, and I described this before, but I'm going to do it again because it's the most awesome experience of seeing these lightsaber lights, these orange glowing lights that look like Z's, like a letter Z, but there's 4 of them forming kind of a rectangular box area on the edges, just sitting there in the trail. They're like 2 feet up, and they're kind of a box in over there, and it's glowing. And I still got so I have such a euphoric feeling that I didn't have time. There's no room for fear to kind of come in my system at that point. I'm looking and smiling at that because I'm already talking about mythical creatures. It says, and there's even a light portal sitting on the side. And so you don't see that every day. I'm actually saying this out loud, as ridiculous as it may sound.
In other words, what am
I going to have next? I'm a Doctor Who fan. Is he going to come down in a place box or a call box or something like that?
Did you almost feel high? Like you took? Did you almost feel like you were high?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Not delusional. Not taking a trip. Not leaving the farm. And just nothing like that. Didn't take anything. Didn't take. I don't do that. And I'm seeing this, and I'm looking at it, I'm staring at it, and I'm walk up where I'm parallel to where this thing is. And the thing about this is, if you can imagine the structure that I was describing, that it had the perspective of being stationary, so as you walk past it or walked in front of it, the beams you'd be parallel with you or perpendicular to you, and walk, then you'd be able to see the sides of it too. So it had shape. It was not like an optical illusion or anything like that. It actually had form. And so I keep staring at the thing. I'm slowly walking past it, but I'm also got the thought in my head, I'm not supposed to walk any closer to this thing. It's just like, the first thought was this thing will either kill me, or if I get too close to it, I might be going somewhere where I'll never come back, like a one-way trip.
Yeah, okay? That's what I'd be worried about.
Yeah, but I was not fearful. I'll say that. And so I'm looking, I don't want to keep my eyes off of it because it's glowing and it's also pulsating. So it's like pulsating energy, And the tubes aren't really solid. They're kind of glowing. They're kind of staticky around them too as well, like electricity. The whole thing's got electricity just surrounding all those things. And then I turned away for 1/2 a second. When I turn back, and all of a sudden I see this giant orb. Keep in mind, this is in the middle of the day. I see something about the size of a beach ball. It's translucent, like a gigantic soap bubble with orangey, staticky electricity around it, but translucent in the middle. But very similar to the orange from the light beams. I watch this thing floating, and it's floating towards that structure. So I keep observing it, and it moves, and it positions itself right at the end of the structure and fits itself right in between, almost like a docking into a spaceship or something like this. It goes into it, and then once it positions itself, this whole structure, including the orb, glows together, and then it starts to fade out. This whole experience from the first time I seen this to the end was around a minute, almost 60 seconds of viewing this thing. Wow. And I'll tell you what, that I know what we saw the day before. It had to be related. You see a predator-like being, and then you see that, you got to connect the dots and say, this has to be related. Is it Bigfoot? Might have something to do with Bigfoot.